You're listening to the Bahá'í World News Service.
During a conference at the Bahá'í World Centre, groups of Continental Counsellors joined in conversations that were recorded by the Bahá'í World News Service for a series of podcasts on youth and social transformation, the advancement of women, and on Bahá'í moral and spiritual education programs. In this episode, Counsellors Musonda Kapusa-Linsel from Zambia,
they realize that actually their true identity is that of being a human being and that of being noble.
Shirin Youssefian Maanian from Greece.
We all see what happens when you empower youth.
Raffaella Capozzi from Italy.
We are building a new way of thinking about the future.
Bob Ale from Samoa.
These youth are at the heart of this process, engaging in the lives of young people as well as their families.
Gulnara Eyvazova from Azerbaijan.
It was amazing to see how youth spaces created in various communities.
And Ayafor Ayafor from Canada.
We have whole generations from 10 years now who are accompanying each other through the process.
Explore the ways youth are contributing to social transformation in their communities through engaging in Bahá'í initiatives for moral and spiritual education.
So much of society is about maybe sometimes seeing youth in a negative light, seeing them as somehow rebellious or apathetic, and yet I think we've all experienced, we all see what happens when you empower youth, how they have this thirst for knowledge and learning about the world. They want to contribute, don't they, to a better world. And they have also this passion for justice. And so when they're somehow given the space and help to sort of look at how can they contribute, then we just see these amazing outcome. And I'm sure you've all got experiences where you live of that kind of things.
It's interesting you mentioned that because we see it in many of the communities where traditionally the voices of youth were suppressed in a sense. You're not, you don't speak unless you're asked. But through the educational process, the youth were able to explore concepts such as service, what is selfless service. And when they started to express their understanding of selfless service into action, the community, especially the leaders, gave them recognition. So, for example, in some of these settings, the pandemic really exacerbated this sense of hopelessness. And many families were, in a way, deprived of social services. But youth had this resilience and they as you mentioned, what's the opposite of apathy? It took initiative. Yeah, they took initiative. They saw what the needs of their communities, and because they had this understanding of being able to contribute, and they saw the needs. Quickly they wanted to explore with many other families the concept of mutual cooperation, for example. And it's interesting, like food security was an issue in our islands. Ships weren't coming in because of the pandemic, and many families were struggling to meet their needs. But just by socializing with other families, talking to them, what would it look like if our families combine our resources? So it's interesting how they initiated this, and then they identified parts of lands with these families, and what we also learned is that youth created the space And now the community is taking ownership of that space because they saw the benefits of families coming together to talk about their aspirations, talk about the needs, and to work together to meet those needs. And just in the recent months, they had their harvest, and they wanted to sell it. But when reflecting with some of them, they said that not all the families benefited from this collective plantation. So they said, okay, how can we engage more? And when I was reflecting with one of the new families that has recently joined, they said because of this, there's a sense of love, amongst the community, but also there's this sense that true love means creating room for others to join.
I think we were reflecting earlier, many of us have seen many of these young people who've come up and in fact learning to define their identity or recognize their identity through the process of helping those who are younger than them. So you have a young person who comes into a program in the summer, for example, and at the beginning, they're envious of their friends who are playing soccer or different things, but then by the end of the summer, they're teaching children's classes, teaching junior youth group. I mean, we have young people who every day of the week, they're coming back after school and they're dedicating a lot of time to working with those who are younger than them and not thinking about it as a burden. It's just become part of what they are.
I was going to say something about youth coming together, like even in large numbers, is so encouraging for the youth because they feel that they somehow, this support they give to each other. Whereas a lot of the time they have had this isolation, not just because of pandemic, but just generally, just feeling quite alone, not being able to find a friendship group, and now being in a larger group and feeling part of a movement, a youth movement. And then how the conversation changes. And maybe at the beginning, the conversation is about a lot of their problems and the things they're dealing with. And then there's like this switch is made the moment they start to look at how they can be of service, whether that's doing voluntary work for the environment or whether it's very concrete things like, I think you mentioned also, like helping younger kids with their homework, with their schoolwork, offering some kind of support to the younger generation. And we found that just gave a whole sense of purpose to a large group of youth who felt that time is very precious and how can we actually make our time worthwhile. We had a really interesting experience where at one point with the youth we were speaking about the subject of prayer, and it was very alien to many of the youth. And so quite a few of the youth were saying, I'm atheist. Another one was saying, I don't believe in prayer. I've never done prayer. I've never been comfortable with it. Or they associated prayer with a very specific format, And then they started teaching children's classes and helping with the spiritual and sort of moral empowerment and education of children. And within that framework, they were talking to the children about prayer, and suddenly you see these youth coming back and reflecting and going, I need to learn about this subject. I need to, how can I talk about it if I'm not, moved by this or I'm not trying it? And we saw a lot of this kind of transformation where then youth would come and say, actually, prayer is really cool. It's like, I use it in my everyday life now. And it was because of the children that a youth, got inspired to use prayer. And how now some of these youth are thinking about even taking a year out before they go to university and staying in the neighborhood and really offering like a year to help these processes become stronger. And it's really beautiful transformation.
I feel that there is this natural aspiration of nobility in human being. And then for youth is quite fast to realize that this is inside us, that human beings have these wonderful qualities and talents, and the real power that we have is power of love, power of justice, so we can use this power and can change the world very quickly. And this is something that is not so present in the society. So when you look at human being as an animal, and they can't do much more than think about their own interests, and you can change completely the perspective, this changes the entire picture. So it's so exciting to see that this can be very fast.
You know, Raffaella, you just mentioned something about nobility. And it's one of the things in, for instance, where I come from, this question of equality of men and women, and how women are not considered equal to men because it is felt like their capacity is much lower. In this village, the youth have been learning, you know, about how to ensure that the male youth do not leave the women youth behind. It was, of course, discovered that there was such a disparity, you know, between the male and the female in the village. And so the youth made such a conscious effort that whenever, whatever program, for instance, that is empowering youth, as much women or as much young ladies, you know, are included. And in this particular village, before when you visit, there would be in a space, there would be mostly male youth. And also the male youth would be the ones who would go a little bit further in terms of education. But now, because of this consciousness of that, you know, of the equality, you know, of men and women, we have seen so many young ladies who have these aspirations, you know, to become educated, and they're actually pursuing their education. And when we visited, we asked them, so what are your aspirations? And, you know, they said that society looks at them as empty brains, you know. Wow. But then whilst they were engaged in this process, they discovered that they're actual gems. And they're in the gems of inestimable value. They are also protagonists, you know, of change in their community. And so they know that they have just as much capacity as the boys have. And you can really see in this community that there's such a transformation at the level of culture, because even the parents now are seeing that, oh, our girls do have the same capacity as our boys. So another thing is when we're having conversations with these young girls before, there would be, when you ask them like, what, for instance, when you finish studying your secondary school, we call it secondary school back home, what would you like to study? And a lot of them are speaking about, you know, I would like to study something that will make me benefit, you know, my community. So I would, and I don't want to leave my village because I want to make sure that I contribute to those who are to the life, the uplifting the spiritual and the material life of the community, so that those who are coming behind me can also have the same aspirations and contribute to the community. So they would like to study, most of them would like to be teachers because they feel that the role of a teacher in society is very important. And really, the teacher is the one who instills, you know, a lot of desire, you know, for learning. And so some of them would like to become farmers, but then using the good technology of farming as well as the traditional technology of farming. So you can see that really the conversation is really changing in this community, and everyone is seeing themselves as equal, and that everyone has the capacity to contribute to the betterment of that community.
It's very powerful to see material and spiritual progress in the same path and same perspective. I was thinking also for the youth in our society, how important it is to see the science and religion that go together. Because we have a lot of trust in a scientific solution of many problems like environmental problems and health problems. But then we starting observing that the spiritual part is missed, and the youth immediately realize how important it is to have these spiritual and the spiritual principles and qualities that are needed to solve problems. So it's not that we don't have the scientific solution of the big problems that the world have, But if we don't use capacity of collaboration, unity of mankind, justice in the world, it's impossible to solve the problems. And for them, it's so clear that in a few minutes they are able to identify next steps and again find new hope for some challenge and problems that we are facing. We want the betterment of the world in both perspective, and this is one reality, is something that they really appreciate, and then it's easier to think education in combining with service, family life, economical life, many things of their life that can become one.
I think all these things are touching on this question of how society is advancing, the advancement of civilization, of which the young people are at the fore. So like the principles of consultation, working together as a whole group. And the thing in consultation is that when you have a group of people who are working together and they're looking at all the dimensions coherently. It's like I need help with my homework. Also, I need to study, I need to work with others, and we accompany each other. And when they face obstacles, they consult. And the consultation allows them to chart a path forward based on certain principles. And those principles can be scientific, but the principles are also based on spiritual teachings and, as you mentioned, the qualities that they raise. So the power of the youth movement is not just that the youth are becoming enlightened to their capacity, but they're becoming enlightened to their capacity together, working together as a group. And as they're doing it, because they're doing it with a generation that comes after them, and then it's like generation upon generation that is building, and it's kind of building on the shoulders of each other, because we're not going to consult about a problem multiple times. We'll solve it and we'll move ahead. But we will we'll encounter other ones, but then we've built our capacity to address the other ones.
I would never forget one story what mother shared, that she was suffering with her kids in her home, and she was trying to be perfect mother, reach out for each of her 3 children, do everything for them, pack lunch and cook, have home, and also at the same time try to read something. And then at a certain stage she understood that something is wrong. Then these 2 mothers came together, said, okay, let's come together during certain hours during the week and have our common space. Children are together, we're doing many things together, and how we help each other. So we felt that children, they brought some quotes from children classes to those spaces, and then everybody started caring about each other. How do I care about my mother when she's tired? How can I participate? Or what I can do to help my young sister with her house homework, that mother can have more time for herself, or to spend some to cover her basic needs. And the amazing change for me was how fathers coming to this area. We know that fathers are all day they're trying to, particularly in the villages, try to assist with income. But having them as part of that conversation, they actually help them also to be closer to their children, to feel their children more, and also help them also to overcome that gap between ages and build constructively those relationships. So I enjoyed visiting that community. And when children came, are we coming to consult about? I have topic to start with. So previously when I visited, I did not see this kind of change when child comes with idea what we can start conversation about.
And I also see these efforts by the youth to help the younger generation and engage in conversations with the parents is helping in many of our settings and neighborhoods and villages redefine what family means. So like one example of a family in one of the neighborhoods in Samoa, the the daughter just didn't have this inspiration to go to school anymore. And the animator had been having conversations with this, junior youth about the reasons why, and she felt because her grades are low, and all these, and other people's in her family, they're illiterate, so why should I make an effort? This is my identity. This is who I'm going to be. And the animator immediately went and had a conversation with the parents. And then the parents realized that many other families have the same issues with and then they created this space, this gathering of families of the same challenges. And then the animator said, it's very interesting, this how we've come to realize that when these youth are at the heart of this process, engaging in the lives of young people as well as their families, they see them as their own. So they become one big family in a sense.
It's interesting because in very different realities we are the same. There are so many youth engaged in this same way.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the youth also before this movement were struggling with is this question of identity and having this identity crisis. But then, of course, having been engaged in this process of spiritual and material transformation, they realize that actually their true identity is that of being a human being and that of being noble, and they realize that the whole world is going towards this oneness and thinking about how the identity really should be the identity of oneness, of humanity. And so we're really seeing now the youth not struggling so much about the tribe they belong to, or their color, their ethnicity, or even in this regard back home, gender, and this struggle, for an identity that is imbued in prejudice. I think we have seen that the movement has really created in the youth this consciousness that we are all one, and that everyone has capacities. Everyone has capacities which need to be unlocked, and everyone has something to contribute to this divine civilization, which Ayafor had referred to earlier on. And I think this is as a way to move forward, the youth. As if we bring in more and more youth to have this vision, for humanity, then of course we will see communities, neighborhoods, villages really flourish on the principles, that will bring about this oneness.
You're listening to the Bahá'í World News Service, reporting on major developments and endeavors of the global Bahá'í community. For more information, visit news.baha'i.org.